Hello, welcome to a tutorial on how to screen print. So for today, we're going to go over the procedures on how to screen print, not necessarily how to use the vinyl cutter. So if you wanted to learn a little bit more about the layout or how to send it out and how to load the machine, you can reference the vinyl cutter orientation video for that. So today, we're just going to grab one of our designs, which it should be our American Indian Resource Center logo. And we're just going to drop it in to Silhouette Studio. So Silhouette Studio, remember, it's a free software that you can download and use for your own projects. You can save your design into your library and then import it by logging into your own account here at the library. So we're going to go ahead and use the import as a vector. Remember, if you need to trace it out, you should be able to do so, but importing it as a vector, PDF, or high quality PNG would probably work best so you can have better quality. So let's go ahead and click on import. We'll wait for it to load. There we go. So we have our design, and let's go ahead and just rescale it and delete the text. So we're not going to use the text for this image either, just because it's going to add a little bit more complexity to the design. So we're just going to ungroup the whole design by right-clicking on it. We can just click and hold on any of your empty space, drag so you can make a square around the text that we want to delete, and then just click on delete. So your shapes should be separate objects. So let's go ahead and remember to, again, click and hold, highlight both segments, right click, and click on group. So now we have them in one part. So with screen printing, you want to give yourself a little bit of a border on the left side and the top as well, just so you can have some space to put tape and block out any of the areas where you don't want ink to get onto. So let's go ahead and make this guy 8 inches. Put him on the corner. We have our space at the top and on the left side. That should be enough. And then we can go ahead and send it out. So we're going to click on send at the top right. We're going to click on our material. And we're going to go to vinyl. So we're going to choose vinyl, vinyl matte, although you could also do vinyl glossy. They're both the exact same setting. One of them is just shiny, one of them is not. So once we apply that, all of my default settings should work as it is. So we're just going to go ahead and click on send. So now that you have your stencil, remember that you're going to have to weed out the actual design part instead of the negative space. So once we have the stencil weeded and trimmed, we're going to use some transfer tape. So for this, you can use gridded ones, you can use paper-based ones. In the space, I would recommend to use this large low-tack transfer that will make transferring onto the silk mesh easier, especially when it comes time to remove it. So we're going to go ahead and just find a piece, trim it to size, and as you notice, I'm grabbing it, it's creating creases, it's bunching up, and so it's going to create air bubbles once I transfer this because it's not nice and flat. So what I like to do is just fold it in the middle so you have a nice flat middle part. Find the middle part of your stencil and then just let it roll out by itself. So once we do that, we want to just gently press down so that the vinyl is actually making contact with the transfer tape and then apply some hard pressure. If you go straight to a strong pressure and push down on it, it might still pinch or pull or create bubbles. Now remember that this is super low tack, so you definitely want to apply a good amount of pressure before we transfer. There we go. And so now we have to remove the stencil. So I also like to remove it, flip it upside down, and then that way if something is rolling off and it's not sticking down to your transfer tape, we can just kind of like this, we can just roll it back down, apply some pressure directly onto the wax backing, and then just keep on rolling. Definitely go slow just to make sure that all of the elements are staying on there. There we go. So we have our stencil complete. So now, we'll move this out of the way for a second. We're going to load our screen. So with our silk screen, we can go ahead and just put it on the platen. We're going to clamp them onto this arm. And whenever you move it, just make sure you primarily grab the metal and not the wood mesh or the wood frame. Otherwise, it's going to start to break. So we'll lift it up. We're going to go ahead and put our shirt on the platen. And so there's your neckline. You can position it wherever you are intending to put your design. If you have something that's smaller or something kind of weird, like maybe your sleeve or something, you can grab some cardboard or some wood, some parchment paper, and put it in between. The reason for that is that excess ink can travel and go to the backing of it, and so we don't want the front of your shirt to have a design and also on your back because it's going to transfer. So definitely want to have a little bit of an interface in between to protect it. So once we do that, we can go ahead and lower the frame, grab your stencil, figure out where you want to put it. Let's say centered about 3 or 4 fingers below the neckline, just to give it a little bit of space and it doesn't seem so high. Once we do that, again, just a light squeegee. Once it's making contact, then apply some good pressure. Making sure to push out any air bubbles out. And if it turns out that you don't like where you placed your stencil, it's maybe not centered, I would not recommend pulling the stencil off and repositioning it. Just loosen the clamps, adjust the screen, or just adjust the shirt. Otherwise, it might not be as sticky and it might peel off whenever you run the ink through. So this should be good. And then now, if you used a low-tack transfer, this part should be easier. And it should also not create so many air bubbles. I need a bit more pressure on that. Yeah, there we go. That's better. That's one of the downsides of working with very thin designs, is that they do tend to lift a little bit. We don't do the professional method of screen printing, which is using emulsion. We use vinyl stencils, and so you will be limited with the details or the amount of colors you can add, depending on how complex you want the whole process to be. So once we do this, we're going to block out any of the areas where we don't want ink to get onto. So we're going to use some painter's tape for that. So we're going to block off the sides. And then if you do need to go all the way out to the edge, I would recommend to not just put it perfectly next to the wood, because once you put some pressure, the wood and the tape are going to separate. It's going to leave a crack, and then all of your ink is going to go in there. And so we're just going to kind of crease it and make it right up against the wall or against the frame. And for the bottom, I typically do at least 2 lines of tape. If you wanted to, you could block out the whole area just so you can make sure that you don't have any ink onto it. This is just a test shirt, so I'm not going to worry about this edge or the bottom parts. But if you're a little bit messy or worried about it, definitely block out those areas. Let's actually do the left side. Okay, so we've blocked out most of the space that we don't want ink to get onto. And so now we can add some fabric paint. So we're using Speedball. It's water-based fabric ink. But you can also use Plastisol, especially if you're working with darker fabrics. It has a bit more pigmentation, so it's easier to work with. It'll come out a little bit more. But for starters, water-based ink will work well. And you can't really feel it. It feels like it's embedded into the shirt. Okay. So after you add some ink at the bottom, we're going to hold the squeegee at around 45-degree angle. If you have it too perpendicular, it's going to start to skip as it's running through the mesh. It's going to create lines. It creates a lot of friction, and it might mess up your design. The lower that you pull it, the more ink that's going to pull with you. And so have it about 45 degrees. I like to spread my fingers so you can have firm, even pressure, and then push down, firm pressure, and then pull all the way. And then if you want to, you can repeat the process twice. So we're going to go ahead and put it behind the ink, lower it to 45 degrees, firm pressure, push down, and then just pull all the way. So with one press, it looks pretty clean. We don't have excess ink, so we can just go ahead, put this off to the side. Remember, we're going to grab the metal frame, grab, lift, and there we go. So we have a little bit of irregularity. So right here, wherever the stencil was lifting up, that was my fault, but most of it is pretty clean. So once we're done, we're going to have to heat set it. So this will not be permanent until you heat set it, which is at 300 degrees for 20 to 30 seconds. If you take it off the heat press and it still feels a little wet, a little tacky, throw it back on there for another 10 seconds at a time. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so the next step will be to heat set the shirt. So we're gonna go ahead and put it on the press, and then you can use some parchment paper or some Teflon. The reason for that is, one, to help protect your shirt from burning, and then two, it helps from the paint transferring any of the ink onto the heat plate and vice versa. So it's just kind of to keep it clean. Like I said, this is going to run for 30 seconds for 300 degrees with medium pressure. So we can just go ahead and close, clamp it down. Oh, it's popping up. I don't know what it's doing. There we go. I typically like to get it away from the heat just so it doesn't feel so hot and it doesn't feel like the ink evaporates, so it feels a little wet or tacky. So once it is a little cool, yep, it's nice and solid. There's nothing wet or sticky about it, and so it's done. So whenever you heat set it, just don't wash it for 24 hours. It's still having some time to bond onto the fabric, so don't wash it for 24 hours. Once you do, flip it inside out, do a gentle cycle, but then after that, you can use whatever care instructions you like. All right, so I've already removed all of the tape, the painter's tape, and the vinyl stencil from the screen. Also, any of the excess ink that is left on the screen, we can scoop up and put it back into the container. As long as you're not mixing your colors, we can reuse it for other projects. So the ink that I had in excess could probably give me another 2 or 3 shirts. So we can minimize waste by actually putting it back into the container. So we're gonna spray it down with some Simple Green. It's just some all-purpose degreaser. We can find it above the sink. So as long as you spray it, it'll buy you a little bit more time. Otherwise, it's going to start to harden and the pores are going to get clogged. The hot water is on the back, so you can go ahead and just flip it to the back. We can click this button to apply pressure, and we're basically going to pressure wash the screen. There we go. It's clean. If it stains the screen, it's okay. If you hold it up to the light and you can see light going through it, it means that the pores are still open, and so you'll be able to push ink through it. If they're clogged, you won't be able to use it unless you wanted a distressed look, but the ink will not be able to flow through the mesh. So this, we can just go ahead and leave it to drip dry in the sink. And then for our tools, mainly our squeegee and our spatula that we use to scoop up the paint, it is water-based, but we don't want all of it to go down the drain. So we'll have to clean off as much as we can and then give it a rinse. So for this part, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to grab all of the ink. Just try to do as much as you can. So something like that. We'll do the same thing for the squeegee. There we go. And then just with some water, give it a quick rinse. There we go. And then we can just leave these in the drying rack right next to the sink. And then that's how you clean the screen.